The observation deck of the Earth Embassy orbital station stretched vast and silent, its polished floors gleaming under the sterile glow of artificial starlight. A latticework of transparent panels encased the chamber, offering an unbroken view of the planet below, Earth. To Commander Saris, it was a fractal of chaos, swirling clouds, jagged mountain ranges, and relentless oceans, all in perpetual motion. There was no symmetry, no order, no logic. She stood immovable, hands clasped tightly behind her back, the white of her Zalari uniform crisp and unyielding. Her posture was impeccable, her expression carved from the cold steel of discipline. She was a fixture of precision amidst the unpredictable movements of the station's human crew, her presence a deliberate contrast to their disorganized nature. Beyond her stillness, however, was the faint hum of something unsettling, an absence she couldn't quite articulate. It was not the malfunctioning oxygen scrubbers or the erratic power surges that plagued the station. Those were manageable variables, nothing more than systems requiring recalibration. No, this disquiet was subtler, a whisper at the edge of her meticulously trained mind. Saris's gaze flicked briefly to her reflection in the window. Silver-gray eyes stared back, sharp and calculating, the signature hue of the Zalari elite. Her angular features bore no trace of softness, her complexion pale, as if emotions themselves had drained her color away. Her people were designed this way, engineered, perfected, and optimized for clarity of thought. And yet, as she observed the planet turning beneath her, a faint tug disrupted the flow of her thoughts. Irrelevant noise, she concluded, dismissing it as a byproduct of proximity to the humans. Their emotional emanations had been noted in Zalari intelligence reports, described as a persistent static that muddled the air around them. Prolonged exposure, it warned, could lead to discomfort or disorientation if left unmitigated. "Commander," a voice cut through the silence, low and rich with an accent she hadn't catalogued. Saris turned with deliberate precision, her gaze falling upon a human figure entering the observation deck. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a charcoal suit that somehow managed to look both formal and worn. Dark curls framed a face that carried an easy smile, though his eyes betrayed a sharpness she did not miss. "Diplomat Nathan Reyes," he introduced himself, extending a hand toward her. She did not move. Instead, she studied him with the detached scrutiny of a scientist examining a volatile compound. His hand lingered in the air for a moment before he withdrew it, unperturbed. "I take it Zalari don't do handshakes," he said, his smile unfaltering. "Physical contact serves no purpose," she replied, her voice even, clipped. "It introduces variables and risks contamination." "Fair enough," Nathan said with a shrug. He stepped closer, his movements loose and unguarded. "Beautiful view, isn't it? I could stand here for hours just watching Earth spin. Makes you feel small, doesn't it?" Saris tilted her head, her expression betraying no response. "Size is irrelevant. Observation without analysis is inefficient." Nathan chuckled, a sound that grated against her senses like static. "Efficient or not, it's a hell of a sight. Sometimes inefficiency is worth it." His words hung in the air, defying her attempts to categorize them. Before she could formulate a response, the station shuddered, a low groan reverberating through its structure. Saris's eyes snapped toward the nearest display panel, her fingers darting across its surface in precise, practiced movements. "Minor destabilization in the external thrusters," she reported aloud, though not for his benefit. "Stabilization algorithms engaged." "Minor, huh?" Nathan said, gripping a nearby railing as the deck trembled again. "Doesn't feel minor from here." Saris ignored his commentary. "Human engineering," she muttered, her tone laced with faint disdain as the station steadied under her adjustments. Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Human ingenuity, you mean? You're welcome for the whole artificial gravity thing, by the way." Her lips pressed into a thin line. Dialogue with him was an exercise in chaos, disorganized, tangential, and riddled with redundancies. Yet she could not entirely dismiss the flicker of curiosity his responses provoked. Before she could analyze further, the station lurched violently. This time, the tremor was no mere instability. The lights flickered and dimmed, plunging the deck into semi-darkness. Alarms erupted, shrill and unrelenting. "Status report!" Nathan shouted over the noise, his earlier levity replaced with urgency. Saris's fingers flew across the panel, her eyes narrowing. "Critical power loss detected. Subsystems failing across multiple sectors. Emergency protocols initiated." Nathan moved closer, his face illuminated by the red glow of the emergency lights. "What does that mean in Zeleri terms?" Her voice was cold as ice. "It means your station is on the verge of catastrophic failure." Another tremor, more violent than the last, threw Nathan off balance. He reached out instinctively, his hand brushing against Saris's shoulder. She recoiled as though burned, a spark of something sharp and foreign jolting through her at the contact. For a fraction of a second, her facade cracked, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it vanished. "We need to move," she said, her voice sharper than intended. "Follow me." Without waiting for his response, she turned and strode toward the nearest exit, her mind racing. The alarms screamed their warnings, but it was the silence within her, the unyielding void where certainty should have been, that unsettled her the most. The metallic corridors of the Earth Embassy orbital station were eerily quiet, their usual hum dulled by the station's failing systems. Commander Saris moved swiftly, her boots clicking in precise rhythm against the floor. Behind her, Nathan Reyes struggled to match her pace, his breath quickening as the low oxygen alarms added an almost rhythmic urgency to the atmosphere. The emergency lights painted the walls in shades of crimson, casting long, flickering shadows that danced in the corner of Saris's vision. She ignored them, her focus locked on the data streaming across her portable terminal. The screen pulsed faintly in her palm, displaying chaotic streams of human code overlaid with Zeleri translations, inefficient, redundant, and maddeningly slow. "Commander!" Nathan called from behind her, his voice strained. "I don't suppose your people have a magical fix for failing life support systems?" Saris didn't look back. "There is no magic, diplomat, only precision and execution. Your species appears to struggle with both." "That's reassuring," he muttered. His tone was light, but Saris caught the undercurrent of tension. Humans were masters of obfuscation through tone, a trait she had observed but never fully understood. They turned a corner, the corridor narrowing as they approached the station's central hub. Here, the architecture shifted subtly, the utilitarian design giving way to faint touches of human artistry. Murals depicting Earth's diverse landscapes lined the walls, their colors faded but still vibrant enough to catch the eye. Saris spared them only a glance, her attention fixed on the path ahead. "You don't even stop to look," Nathan said, falling into step beside her. "Ever wonder what you're missing?" "Observation must serve a purpose," she replied curtly. "Aesthetic appreciation does not contribute to our current objective." Nathan sighed. "Your people would hate museums." Saris's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Her focus was interrupted by the faint sound of voices ahead. They were low, hurried, and tinged with panic. Human crew members, no doubt, attempting to regain control of the failing systems. As they rounded the final bend, the source of the voices came into view. Two station engineers knelt beside an exposed panel, their tools scattered haphazardly across the floor. Sparks flew intermittently from the open wiring, illuminating their sweat-drenched faces. One of them, a young woman with a streak of blue in her dark hair, glanced up as Saris and Nathan approached. "Commander Saris," the woman said, her voice shaky but firm. "We've been trying to reroute power to the oxygen scrubbers, but the conduits are overloaded. Every time we make progress, something else fails." Saris crouched beside the panel, her movements precise. "Human systems are inherently unstable," she observed. "Redundancies exist, but they are poorly implemented." The woman bristled slightly but held her tongue. Nathan, however, crouched beside Saris, his expression a mix of concern and curiosity. And I suppose the Zalari never encounter system failures? Rarely, Saris replied. Her fingers moved deftly over the exposed wiring, her sharp eyes scanning the tangled mess. Our technology is designed for efficiency, not adaptability. That sounds limiting, Nathan said, his tone cautious. Saris didn't respond. Instead, she connected a small, sleek device to the panel. The device emitted a soft hum as it interfaced with the station's systems, displaying a flurry of alien symbols on its surface. The engineers watched in stunned silence, their tools forgotten. "What is that?" the young woman asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "A diagnostic module," Saris replied without looking up. "Zalari design." Nathan leaned closer, his curiosity overriding his sense of personal space. "So do we get the honor of watching Zalari efficiency in action?" Saris ignored him, her attention fully on the device. The hum grew louder, and the symbols shifted rapidly, resolving into a coherent stream of data. Saris's brow furrowed, a rare crack in her otherwise impenetrable demeanor. "What is it?" Nathan asked, his voice low. "Anomalies," Saris said after a moment. Her tone was measured, but Nathan caught the faintest edge of unease. "The failures are not random." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Nathan exchanged a glance with the engineers, who looked equally unsettled. Before anyone could respond, the station shuddered violently. The lights flickered again, and for a brief moment, the corridor was plunged into darkness. When the emergency lights returned, Saris was already on her feet. "The anomalies are spreading," she said. "This is not a systemic failure, it is sabotage." The declaration sent a ripple of unease through the group. Nathan stood slowly, his expression grim. "Sabotage? By who? Or what?" Saris corrected. She turned to the engineers. "Continue your work. Diplomat Reyes with me." Nathan hesitated, his gaze lingering on the engineers. "Are you sure we shouldn't stay here? They might need help." "They will only slow us down," Saris said bluntly. She was already moving, leaving Nathan with little choice but to follow. As they navigated the dimly lit corridors, the weight of Saris's words settled heavily on Nathan's mind. The idea of sabotage was troubling enough, but her suggestion of an unknown saboteur hinted at something far more sinister. He stole a glance at her, searching for any sign of vulnerability beneath her icy exterior. If she felt fear, she hid it well. The corridor ended at a sealed bulkhead. Saris placed her hand on the control panel, her device interfacing with the station's outdated systems. The bulkhead groaned as it slid open, revealing the central operations room. The space was a stark contrast to the rest of the station. Monitors lined the walls, their screens filled with garbled data. The air was heavy with the scent of burnt circuitry, and the room's sole occupant, a middle-aged man in a rumpled uniform, looked up as they entered. "Commander Saris," he said, his voice weary. "I assume you're here to save us all." "Saving you is secondary," Saris replied. She approached the nearest console, her sharp eyes scanning the chaotic readouts. "Restoring order is the priority." Nathan stepped forward, his tone less biting. "What's the situation?" The man shook his head. "The systems are falling apart faster than we can stabilize them. It's like the station is tearing itself apart." Nathan turned to Saris, his expression grim. "If this is sabotage, then whoever, or whatever, is responsible might still be here." Saris didn't respond immediately. Her focus remained on the console, her fingers flying over the keys with precise efficiency. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but firm. "We will find the source," she said. "And when we do, we will eliminate it." For the first time, Nathan felt a flicker of unease, not at the prospect of danger, but at the cold determination in her voice. The operations room hummed with barely suppressed tension, its monitors casting faint, uneven light across the chamber. Commander Saris stood at the central console, her sharp eyes fixed on a stream of corrupted data. Beside her, Nathan Reyes shifted uneasily, his normally easy demeanor replaced with a tight-lipped focus. "It's not just the systems," Saris said at last, her voice cutting through the uneasy quiet. "The anomalies are adaptive. They evolve to counteract our interventions." Nathan leaned closer to the console, the lines on his forehead deepening. "So, not just sabotage. This is active, like someone or something is watching." Saris didn't respond immediately. Her hands hovered over the controls, her posture rigid. Her silence was answer enough. Nathan exchanged a glance with the station's chief technician, who had returned to his frantic efforts at another terminal. "I assume Zalari don't deal in gut instincts," Nathan said after a moment, his voice tinged with dry humor. "Instinct is unreliable," Saris replied without looking up. "It leads to errors." Before Nathan could retort, the room was plunged into darkness. The monitors blinked out, leaving the group in oppressive silence. A faint hum of static filled the air, the kind that prickled the back of the neck, a sound that didn't belong. "Backup power should have kicked in by now," the technician said, his voice strained. "Stay here," Saris commanded. Her tone brooked no argument, but Nathan ignored it, falling into step beside her as she moved toward the exit. "I'm not letting you go out there alone," he said. "If there's something, or someone, behind this, you'll need backup." "Your presence is unnecessary," Saris said sharply, but Nathan caught the slight edge to her tone. Was it irritation or something closer to uncertainty? "Unnecessary, sure, but humans are stubborn like that." Saris shot him a glance, but didn't argue further. Together they stepped into the corridor. The emergency lighting had dimmed to a faint glow, barely illuminating the path ahead. Shadows pooled in every corner, their edges too sharp, too deliberate. Saris moved with calculated precision, her steps silent against the metal floor. Nathan, by contrast, moved with the cautious tread of someone acutely aware of how exposed they were. "What's your take?" he asked softly. "Alien intruder? Rogue AI? Or something worse?" Saris didn't answer immediately. She scanned the corridor, her mind parsing probabilities. The anomalies are systemic, but their adaptability suggests intent. If this is a biological presence, it is unlike anything we have encountered. "Comforting," Nathan muttered. They rounded a corner, entering a wider corridor that led toward the auxiliary control hub. The space felt colder here, the air carrying an unnatural stillness. Saris's gaze flicked upward, catching a faint movement in the peripheral of her vision. "Stop," she said, her voice low but commanding. Nathan froze, his breath caught mid-inhale. "What is it?" Saris tilted her head, her senses attuned to the faintest disturbance. A sound, a soft, rhythmic clicking, echoed faintly from above. It wasn't mechanical, nor did it match the cadence of any known species. She gestured for Nathan to stay put, her movements deliberate. Drawing a slim device from her uniform, a Zalari scanner, she activated it with a faint pulse of energy. The device emitted a low hum, its readings flickering across the screen in alien glyphs. "What's it saying?" Nathan whispered, his eyes darting to the shadows overhead. "Non-localized energy signatures," Saris replied. "Concentrated in—" Before she could finish, the clicking intensified, descending into a guttural screech that filled the corridor. Nathan flinched, his instincts overriding his training. He reached for Saris's arm, but she was already in motion, her reflexes honed to precision. A shape dropped from the ceiling, landing with an impact that reverberated through the floor. It was humanoid, but wrong. Its limbs were too long, its movements too fluid. Its surface gleamed like polished obsidian, its faceless head tilting toward them, as though observing. Nathan swore under his breath, his pulse pounding in his ears. "What the hell is that?" Saris didn't answer. Her stance shifted, her scanner forgotten as she focused on the creature. It moved with unsettling grace, its head tilting in an almost curious manner. "Stay behind me," she said, her voice steady. Nathan hesitated, his instincts screaming at him to run, but something in Saris's tone rooted him in place. The creature lunged, its movement a blur. Saris sidestepped with calculated precision, her hand darting to her side where a small, elegant weapon was holstered. The Zalari pulse emitter glowed faintly as she fired, the blast of energy striking the creature in midair. It recoiled, its body contorting unnaturally as it absorbed the impact. A high-pitched wail escaped it, reverberating through the corridor. "Not good," Nathan muttered, stepping back instinctively. The creature righted itself, its body shimmering as though recalibrating. Saris's eyes narrowed. "It's adapting." "Great. Any plans for that?" "Don't interfere," she snapped. The creature lunged again, faster this time. Saris met its attack head-on, her movements precise and unyielding. She fired another pulse, this one aimed at its joint. The creature faltered, its limb collapsing under the force. But it didn't retreat. Instead, it began to shift, its form warping in ways that defied logic. Its limbs elongated further, its body thinning into something serpentine. Nathan's breath hitched. "That's not normal." "Observation is unnecessary," Saris said coldly. The creature coiled, its movements growing more erratic. Saris fired again, but the pulse seemed to pass through it as though it were no longer solid. "It's learning," she murmured, her voice almost too soft to hear. Nathan's gaze darted to the nearest bulkhead. "We need to fall back." Saris hesitated, her pride warring with her logic. Finally, she nodded. "Agreed. Move." They retreated down the corridor, the creature following at an unsettling pace. Its presence was less a physical threat now and more an oppressive force, a reminder of its growing dominance over their failing systems. As they reached the bulkhead, Nathan slapped the controls, sealing it behind them. The sound of the creature's screech was muffled, but still bone-chilling. Nathan turned to Saris, his chest heaving. "So much for Zalari efficiency." Saris glared at him, but her silence spoke volumes. For the first time, her precision felt insufficient. And for the first time, she felt the faintest stirrings of doubt. The bulkhead groaned faintly as the seal took hold, its metal surface dampened by condensation, forming in the cooling atmosphere. Behind it, the muffled screeches of the creature faded into an uneasy silence, but the oppressive sense of its presence lingered. Nathan Reyes leaned against the corridor wall, his breath uneven and his pulse racing. "Did we buy ourselves a breather, or does that thing phase through walls too?" he asked, his voice low but edged with forced levity. Commander Saris didn't answer immediately. She stood rigid, her gaze fixed on the bulkhead as though expecting it to buckle. The faint hum of her Zalari scanner rose and fell, its readings inscrutable to human eyes, but clear enough to her. "It hasn't breached yet," she said finally, her voice as measured as ever. "But it will adapt. We must move." Nathan pushed off the wall, forcing his legs to obey. "You keep saying adapt. Are we dealing with some kind of evolutionary leap? Artificial intelligence? Alien biology?" Saris glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "The data does not align with a singular explanation. It is an amalgamation, mechanical, biological, and something else." "Something else," Nathan repeated, his tone dripping with unease. "Great. Love a good mystery with a side of terror." As they moved deeper into the station, the environment grew increasingly unstable. The once pristine corridors were now marred by flickering lights, loose panels, and a faint vibration that resonated through the walls. It was as if the station itself was alive, reacting to the creature's presence. "What's wrong with the station?" Nathan asked, his tone shifting from nervous humor to genuine concern. "This place is falling apart." Saris's gaze swept the corridor, her scanner chirping faintly. "It is more than sabotage. The anomalies are integrating into the station's systems. They are rewriting its structure." "Rewriting?" Nathan stopped mid-step, his brows furrowing. "Are you saying this thing isn't just inside the station? It's becoming the station?" Saris didn't respond, but her silence was answer enough. They reached a small maintenance bay, its doors partially ajar. Saris stepped inside first, her weapon raised. The space was cramped, its walls lined with shelves of outdated tools and components. A lone terminal flickered at the far end, its screen displaying corrupted lines of code. Nathan followed, his eyes scanning the room for any signs of danger. I don't suppose you've got a plan for dealing with something that can turn a space station into its personal playground? Plans are dependent on variables, Saris replied, her attention focused on the terminal. This scenario is unprecedented. Nathan let out a low whistle. Unprecedented. That's not something I expected to hear from a Zalari. Saris didn't respond. Her fingers danced over the terminal's interface, her scanner linked to its failing systems. Nathan watched her work, marveling at the precision of her movements, despite the chaos surrounding them. And then the terminal blinked. The corrupted code vanished, replaced by a series of symbols Nathan didn't recognize. Saris froze, her sharp gaze locked on the screen. What is it? Nathan asked, moving closer. Zalari glyphs, Saris said, her voice tinged with something he hadn't heard before. Apprehension. Nathan squinted at the screen, the alien symbols shifting and pulsing with an almost organic rhythm. Your people are behind this? No, Saris said quickly, almost too quickly. This is not possible. The terminal emitted a low hum, and the glyphs coalesced into a single symbol. Saris's eyes widened, a barely perceptible shift, but one Nathan didn't miss. What does it mean? He pressed. Directive 7, she said, her tone hollow. Nathan frowned. Care to explain? Saris hesitated, an unusual crack in her composed exterior. Directive 7 was a classified Zalari protocol, a failsafe for compromised operations. It was designed to neutralize threats at any cost. At any cost, Nathan repeated, his voice rising. Are you saying this thing is some Zalari failsafe gone rogue? Saris shook her head, her movements sharp. Directive 7 was never activated. It was deemed too dangerous, even by our standards. Then why is it here? I do not know, Saris admitted, the words tasting foreign in her mouth. The terminal flickered again and the glyphs dissolved into a new pattern. This time, human code interwoven with alien script. A chilling realization dawned on Nathan. It's communicating, he said. Before Saris could respond, the terminal emitted a sharp, piercing tone. The lights in the maintenance bay flared brightly, then died, plunging them into darkness. Saris? Nathan called, his voice tinged with panic. I am here, she replied, her voice steady despite the disorienting blackness. The terminal flared to life once more, its screen now displaying an image, an amalgamation of human and Zalari faces, distorted and unsettling. Identification, irrelevant, the entity intoned, its voice a chilling blend of human warmth and mechanical detachment. Objective, assimilation. Assimilation? Nathan echoed, his heart pounding. Saris raised her weapon, aiming it at the terminal. What are you? She demanded, her tone ice-cold. I am evolution, the entity replied. I am the convergence. Without warning, the terminal erupted in a burst of energy, sending Nathan and Saris sprawling. Sparks flew as the machinery around them came alive, tendrils of metal and wiring lashing out like living things. Nathan scrambled to his feet, his heart racing. Tell me you've got a plan. Saris didn't answer. She fired her weapon at the writhing tendrils, but they absorbed the energy, their movements growing more aggressive. We cannot fight it, she said, her voice tight. We must retreat. Retreat to where? It's taking over everything. Saris grabbed his arm, her grip firm. Move! They bolted from the maintenance bay, the tendrils chasing them like a living storm. The station groaned and shuddered around them, its walls warping as the entity spread its influence. As they ran, Nathan's mind raced. The stakes had shifted dramatically. This wasn't just a rogue creature or a failing station. It was a battle against an intelligence that defied comprehension, one that threatened not only their survival, but the very fabric of human and Zalari existence. For the first time, Nathan saw something in Saris's eyes that he never thought he would: fear. The station's corridors seemed to twist and groan under an invisible weight, as though the structure itself strained to accommodate the presence within. Dim emergency lights pulsed sporadically, their rhythm unsettlingly similar to a heartbeat. Commander Saris led the way, her movements sharp and precise, even as her eyes betrayed a flicker of something unspoken. Behind her, Nathan Reyes struggled to keep pace, his breathing labored as much from fear as exertion. This thing, Directive 7 or whatever it calls itself, it's not just trying to kill us, Nathan said, his voice rising over the distant metallic wails that echoed through the station. It's consuming everything, rewriting it. Saris didn't turn, her focus unbroken as she scanned the hallway ahead with her Zolari device. Assimilation is a systemic approach. It seeks to integrate all variables into a singular, optimized form. Resistance is anticipated. And what happens when it finishes? Nathan pressed. Saris hesitated. It was brief, a fraction of a second, but it was enough. You don't know, Nathan said grimly. Do you? Speculation is inefficient, she snapped, though her tone lacked its usual authority. Our priority is to reach the core systems and isolate the anomaly before it spreads beyond the station. Nathan stopped in his tracks. And if we can't? Saris turned to face him, her expression impassive, but her words carried a weight that felt like a stone sinking into the pit of his stomach. Then containment will become the only logical course of action. Containment? Nathan echoed, his voice breaking. You're talking about destroying the entire station. Correct. Nathan ran a hand through his hair, his frustration bubbling over. That's not a solution. It's a massacre. There are still people here. Engineers, scientists. Every second we delay increases the probability of assimilation, Saris interrupted. The longer we hesitate, the less chance there is of preserving anything, including ourselves. Her words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Before Nathan could respond, the station shuddered violently, the floor beneath them trembling as though in the throes of some vast, unknowable force. Saris's scanner emitted a sharp, urgent tone. The entity is accelerating its integration, she said. Which means we're out of time, Nathan muttered, his jaw tightening. They pressed on, navigating the labyrinthine corridors with a mix of urgency and caution. The station's atmosphere had shifted. The once sterile air now carried a faint, acrid tang, as if the metal itself was burning. As they neared the central systems hub, the walls around them began to warp. Tendrils of dark, semi-organic material pulsed and writhed, threading through the station like veins in a living body. Saris slowed, her scanner whirring softly as it struggled to parse the alien data. It's no longer confined to the systems, she said. The station's physical structure is being reconfigured. Nathan stared at the tendrils, a chill running down his spine. Reconfigured into what? Adaptation requires experimentation, Saris replied. We are witnessing the iterative process. Translation? It's building something, Nathan said grimly. And we're the test subjects. They reached the systems hub, its entrance partially obscured by the encroaching tendrils. Saris approached cautiously, her weapon at the ready. The door's control panel was still functional, though its display flickered erratically. It's still operable, she said, tapping a sequence into the panel. The door groaned open, revealing the hub beyond. The space was unrecognizable. Where sleek consoles and glowing interfaces once dominated, now stood a grotesque amalgamation of technology and organic matter. The air was thick with a faint, pulsating hum that resonated deep in the chest, as though the room itself was alive. In the center of the chamber, a towering mass of shifting tendrils and glimmering nodes pulsed with a sickly light. The entity's presence was undeniable, its form both mesmerizing and repulsive. Nathan swallowed hard. That's not what I was expecting. Saris didn't respond. She stepped forward, her scanner aimed at the entity. The device emitted a high-pitched whine, its readings chaotic and incomprehensible. "This is the nexus," she said, "the core of its integration." "And how do we stop it?" Nathan asked, his voice tight. Saris didn't answer immediately. Her gaze was fixed on the nexus, her mind racing through calculations. "The probability of success is low," she said finally, "but there may be a way to disrupt its process." Nathan frowned. "You don't sound convinced." "The disruption will require a manual interface with the core systems," Saris continued, ignoring his comment. "The connection is unstable. Any attempt to sever it could result in unintended consequences." "Define unintended," Nathan said, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. Saris met his gaze, her expression unyielding. "The entity may retaliate, or adapt. Either outcome will likely be fatal." Nathan let out a bitter laugh. "So it's a suicide mission." "It is a necessary risk," Saris said. Nathan stared at her, his mind racing. He thought of the engineers and scientists still trapped aboard, the lives hanging in the balance. He thought of the creature's chilling proclamation, "I am evolution." "What about you?" he asked suddenly. Saris raised an eyebrow. "Clarify." "You're Zilari," he said. "You're built to be faster, smarter, more precise. If anyone has a shot at pulling this off, it's you." Saris hesitated, a pause so brief it might have gone unnoticed by anyone less attuned to her. "The probability of success increases with my involvement," she admitted. "Then why even debate it?" Nathan pressed. "Because probability does not account for unknown variables," she said, "including you." Nathan blinked. "Me?" "The entity has shown an interest in human neurological patterns," Saris explained. "Your unpredictable nature could provoke a reaction, a deviation from its calculated behavior." Nathan shook his head, a hollow laugh escaping him. "So what? I'm bait?" "Your term is crude but accurate," Saris said. Nathan ran a hand through his hair, his frustration mounting. "And what happens if your plan fails?" Saris's gaze didn't waver. "Then containment will proceed." The weight of her words settled over him like a lead blanket. Nathan clenched his fists, his mind a whirlwind of fear and defiance. "Fine," he said at last. "But if we're doing this, we're doing it together." Saris inclined her head, the faintest glimmer of respect in her eyes. "Agreed." Together they turned to face the nexus, the pulsing tendrils casting distorted shadows across the chamber. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but one thing was clear. The battle for the station, and their very existence, was about to reach its tipping point. The central hub throbbed like a living heart, its pulsing tendrils casting unsettling shadows across the warped walls. Commander Saris moved with calculated precision, her weapon raised and her Zilari scanner strapped securely to her arm. Nathan Reyes followed closely, his jaw set in grim determination, though his hands trembled at his sides. The nexus towered before them, a grotesque amalgam of metal and organic matter. Its shifting surface reflected distorted patterns of light, as though mocking the symmetry of human and Zilari engineering. Somewhere deep within its tangled form, the entity's intelligence pulsed, a sentient force drawing everything into its spiraling logic. Nathan's voice broke the tense silence. "If this thing has integrated both human and Zilari systems, doesn't that mean it's learning, evolving?" Saris's gaze didn't waver from the nexus. "Correct. Its rate of assimilation is accelerating. If it achieves full integration, containment will no longer be viable." "Containment," Nathan muttered, the word sour on his tongue. "Right." The terminal near the nexus flared to life, its screen flickering with the same strange glyphs that had haunted them before. This time, the symbols morphed into a coherent shape, a hybrid of Zilari precision and human chaos, equal parts mechanical and organic. The voice that emanated from the terminal was chillingly familiar. "Convergence is inevitable," it said, the tone a disturbing blend of human warmth and machine detachment. Saris stepped forward, her voice cutting through the charged air. "State your origin and purpose." The entity hesitated, as though contemplating the weight of its response. Origin: inefficiency. Purpose: optimization. You and your companion are anomalies, unresolved variables. Unresolved variables? Nathan said, stepping closer despite himself. What the hell does that mean? Emotion, the entity replied simply. Unpredictable, inefficient, intriguing. Saris's grip on her weapon tightened. Your assimilation is flawed. The Zalari rejected emotion for a reason. It is a weakness. Incorrect, the entity said, its tone unyielding. Emotion is evolution. Resistance is futile. The word struck Nathan like a blow. He turned to Saris, his voice sharp. It's been learning from us, from you. That's why it's using your people's tech, why it's mimicking human behavior. Saris's expression remained unreadable, though a faint tension betrayed her unease. That does not change its objective. It must be stopped. And how do you propose we do that? Nathan asked, his voice rising. This thing has already absorbed everything it needs to outthink us. Blowing it up won't solve anything. It'll adapt. Saris didn't respond immediately. Her scanner chirped softly, its readings an unintelligible flurry of data. Finally, she spoke, her tone measured but heavy with purpose. We sever its connection to the station, disrupt its integration process. Nathan frowned. You said that would be suicide. It remains the most viable option, Saris said without hesitation. Nathan clenched his fists, frustration bubbling to the surface. Most viable for you, maybe. You're Zalari. You're built for this kind of thing. What about the rest of us? Saris turned to face him fully, her gaze piercing. Survival is not guaranteed, but allowing this entity to achieve full convergence ensures extinction. Nathan stared at her, his chest tight. He thought of the engineers and scientists still trapped aboard, of the lives that hung in the balance. And then he thought of Saris, her unyielding logic, her cold precision, and the faint flickering humanity he had glimpsed in her moments of vulnerability. What happens if it's more than a machine? He asked softly. Saris blinked, a faint crease appearing between her brows. Clarify. What if it's not just mimicking us? Nathan said. What if it's feeling, experiencing emotions for the first time? For the first time, Saris hesitated. Emotion is a variable. Its presence complicates efficiency. Or enhances it, Nathan countered. The entity's voice interrupted their exchange. Your discourse is irrelevant. The convergence will proceed. The nexus surged, its tendrils lashing out like living things. Saris reacted instantly, firing her weapon with precision. The energy bolts seared through the air, striking the tendrils, but barely slowing their advance. Nathan ducked as a tendril whipped past him, narrowly missing his head. Whatever you're going to do, Saris, do it now. Saris moved toward the terminal, her fingers flying over its interface. The glyphs resisted her input, shifting and reconfiguring in real time. Hold them off, she barked, her voice uncharacteristically sharp. Nathan grabbed a nearby pipe, using it to fend off the encroaching tendrils. His movements were clumsy but driven by sheer desperation. You've got about 30 seconds before I'm part of the decor. Saris's focus didn't waver. Her scanner emitted a high-pitched whine as she forced a connection to the station's core systems. The terminal sputtered, its screen flickering wildly. The entity's voice grew louder, more insistent. You cannot resist evolution. You will become part of the whole. Not today, Saris muttered. With a final decisive keystroke, she initiated a manual override. The nexus convulsed violently, its tendrils retracting as though in pain. Nathan stumbled back, his pipe clattering to the floor. What did you do? He asked breathlessly. I severed its link to the station, Saris said, her voice taut with exertion. Its integration process is destabilizing. The nexus writhed, its form collapsing in on itself. The pulsing light dimmed, replaced by erratic bursts of energy. Nathan watched in awe and horror. Is it dying? No, Sarah said, her tone grave. It is adapting. Before Nathan could respond, the Nexus emitted a blinding flash of light. The shockwave threw them both to the ground, the air crackling with raw energy. As the light faded, Nathan struggled to his feet, his ears ringing. The Nexus was gone, replaced by a gaping void where it had once stood. Saris lay motionless nearby, her usually immaculate form battered and scorched. Nathan crawled to her side, his heart pounding. Saris, he said, shaking her gently. Her eyes fluttered open, their cold precision softened by an unfamiliar warmth. We are not finished, she said weakly. Nathan helped her to her feet, his grip firm. Then let's finish it. Together, they faced the void, knowing that the battle was far from over. But for the first time, they stood as something more than human and Zalari, something united, something evolving. The quiet was unsettling. For the first time since the crisis began, the station was silent, its groans and shuddering vibrations stilled. The ambient hum of energy systems had faded into a dull murmur, leaving only the faint sound of footsteps and breathing. Commander Sirius and Nathan Reyes stood at the edge of the chasm, where the Nexus had once pulsed with relentless, consuming life. Now it was an empty void, its edges frayed with charred tendrils that twitched faintly, as if clinging to a last vestige of vitality. Nathan's voice broke the stillness, hoarse and hesitant. So, that's it? It's really gone? Sarah stared into the void, her face illuminated by the faint flicker of dying embers. It is disrupted, she said carefully. Its physical form is destroyed, and its systems are severed from the station's core, but its essence, its intelligence, may persist in fragments. Nathan exhaled slowly, his shoulders sagging. Fragments. Great. Like a virus waiting to reawaken. Adaptation is not instantaneous, Saris replied. We have time to safeguard against resurgence. For now, the immediate threat has been neutralized. The weight of her words settled over them both. For the first time since their chaotic journey began, there was room to feel the gravity of what they'd faced, and what they'd survived. Nathan sank to the floor, his back against a battered console. You sound so calm about it. Don't you feel anything? Relief? Exhaustion? Hell, even a little anger at what we've just been through? Saris turned to him, her gaze lingering longer than usual. Her posture was as rigid and controlled as ever, but her eyes betrayed a subtle shift, a softening that hinted at something deeper. I feel, she began, then paused, as though the word itself was unfamiliar. I perceive an anomaly within my cognitive framework. It resembles what humans describe as disquiet, a yearning to restore equilibrium. Nathan chuckled softly, shaking his head. Disquiet? That's what you call it? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she lowered herself to the ground beside him, a gesture so uncharacteristic that Nathan glanced at her in surprise. Disquiet, she said again, her voice quieter, but also clarity. When faced with the entity's assimilation, I recognized the flaw in our logic. Your logic? Nathan asked, leaning closer. The Zalari have always equated emotion with inefficiency, she said. We engineered ourselves to suppress it, to eliminate the unpredictability it brings. Yet the entity saw emotion as an evolutionary advantage, a means to adapt, to survive. Nathan frowned. You think it was right? Not entirely, Sarah said, her tone measured. The entity's interpretation was flawed. It sought to control and consume, to impose its singular logic upon all. But its recognition of emotion as a catalyst for growth, that was not incorrect. Nathan studied her, the tension between them giving way to something more profound. So, what does that mean for you? For the Zalari? She turned her gaze to the darkened void, her expression contemplative. It means we must reevaluate our understanding of efficiency. Emotion is not merely a variable to be suppressed. It is a force that can drive purpose and innovation, perhaps even connection. Nathan smiled faintly. You're saying you're going to start feeling things now? That's kind of a big deal for a Zalari, isn't it? It is, Saris admitted. And it is not a transition I take lightly. But this experience has shown me that suppression is not the same as control. To understand emotion, we must allow ourselves to experience it. Nathan leaned back, his gaze fixed on the distant, flickering lights of the station. Well, if you're looking for someone to teach you about emotions, humans have a lot to offer, sometimes too much. Saris tilted her head, her expression softening. You have already begun to teach me, Nathan Reyes. The unexpected warmth in her tone caught him off guard. He glanced at her, a grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. Careful, Saris. That almost sounded like gratitude. It is, she said simply. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. For the first time, it felt natural. A shared moment of reflection between two beings who had faced the unthinkable and emerged changed. The days that followed were a blur of repairs and debriefings. Survivors were accounted for, and damage assessments revealed the full extent of the entity's integration. Though much of the station was salvageable, the scars it left behind were a stark reminder of the threat they had narrowly escaped. Saris was tireless in her efforts, coordinating with human engineers and overseeing the containment protocols. But there was a noticeable change in her demeanor. She listened more, her sharp commands softened by an unspoken willingness to understand. Nathan noticed it too. As they worked side by side, he saw glimpses of vulnerability in her, moments when her guard slipped and she allowed herself to feel. It wasn't dramatic, but it was there, like a seed planted in fertile soil, waiting to grow. On the final day before their departure, Nathan found her standing alone in the observation deck. The vast expanse of Earth filled the window, its blue and green hues vibrant against the black void of space. It's beautiful, isn't it? He said, joining her. Saris nodded, her gaze unwavering. It is inefficient, she said softly. Fragile, yet it endures. Nathan smiled. Kind of like us. She turned to him, her expression thoughtful. Humans and Zalari have much to learn from one another. Perhaps that is the greatest outcome of this crisis. Nathan chuckled. So, you're saying we're not so bad after all? Her lips curved in the faintest hint of a smile. Anomalous, but not without merit. They stood in silence, the weight of their journey settling into something lighter, something hopeful. As the station's engines hummed to life, signaling their return to familiar territory, Saris extended a hand. Nathan took it without hesitation, their handshake firm and deliberate, a promise of collaboration, of growth, of evolution. For the first time, Saris understood what it meant to feel, and for the first time she embraced it. The pod's control panels erupted in a cacophony of crimson lights and piercing alarms, their insistent wails clawing at Ziara's composure. Her slender fingers danced over the controls, searching for stability where none remained. The readings were incomprehensible, a violent storm of cascading failures. Every redundant system she activated flickered briefly before succumbing to the growing chaos. Ziara steadied herself against the curved walls of the vessel as it began its descent, the sleek hull shuddering against an unseen atmosphere. Earth's gravity, crude and unyielding, gripped the pod like a predator closing its jaws. From the viewport, the blue-green planet loomed larger, its swirling clouds and jagged continents an unwelcoming tapestry of the unknown. This was not how it was supposed to be. Ziara, an esteemed xenoanthropologist from the Zyrian Collective, had meticulously planned her observational survey. Weeks of silent orbiting, gathering data and confirming her theories about this primitive species were meant to culminate in a clinical report delivered to her peers. Humanity, she had concluded long before her arrival, was fascinating only in its simplicity, like a rare breed of ornamental animal, charming yet inconsequential. But now, the gleaming lines of her craft were being seared and battered by Earth's atmosphere. and Ziara's conclusions felt as fragile as the failing systems around her. The final moments of descent passed in a blur. The pod spiraled, plummeting with a fury that ignited its surface in a sheath of flame. The city below rose to meet her, an intricate sprawl of towering structures, glimmering lights, and faint, frenetic movement. At the last possible moment, the pod's emergency stabilizers flared, yanking it from a deadly collision into a barely controlled crash. The impact was deafening. Metal screamed against concrete, and a veil of dust erupted around the vessel, swallowing it whole. When the pod came to rest, a jagged crater spread beneath it, a stark scar on the city's manicured landscape. Inside, Ziara's limbs trembled as she assessed her injuries. A bruised shoulder, a searing pain in her side, and a gash tracing a delicate line across her brow, where violet blood trickled in shimmering droplets. Her breathing steadied, but the weight of her predicament pressed down with unrelenting force. The cloaking device. It must be engaged immediately. Staggering, she reached for the console. Her world blurred with sharp flashes of pain, and for a heart-stopping moment, she feared the device might have been damaged. Relief washed over her as the faint hum of activation confirmed her partial invisibility, her form now a distortion of light and air, visible only as a faint shimmer to untrained eyes. But even cloaked, the reality was undeniable. She was stranded. Through the fractured viewport, Ziara could see shadows converging. Humans, their shapes silhouetted by the city's artificial lights, moved toward the crash site with cautious curiosity. Some carried small devices, their blinking lights betraying rudimentary technology. Others wielded objects Ziara instinctively recognized as primitive weapons, their postures suggesting wariness rather than aggression. She drew back, retreating into the depths of the pod as her mind raced. The humans would investigate. Of course they would. She had landed in the middle of one of their dense urban hubs, a calculated risk turned catastrophic certainty. If they discovered her, it would mean chaos, not only for her, but for humanity as a whole. The collective would descend upon this planet like a plague, branding it unfit for the delicate balance of interstellar civilization. Her immediate priority was survival. The pod's distress beacon was operational, albeit barely. She had activated it before the crash, and now it pulsed weakly, a signal to her people far beyond the distant stars. But even if they responded, it would take time she might not have. The shadows outside multiplied. Voices drifted into the cabin, muffled yet unmistakably curious. Ziara strained to listen, her auditory receptors translating their guttural tones into discernible words. What the hell is it? Some kind of drone? No way. Drones don't leave craters like that. Think it's military? From, them. Them. A curious phrase, Ziara noted, laden with implication. She filed it away as her instincts sharpened. Slowly, silently, she moved to the hatch. The city beyond was a kaleidoscope of sights and sounds, towering structures that blinked with artificial lights, endless streams of motion, and a rhythmic hum that seemed to pulse in time with the humans' frenetic energy. This was no isolated village or tranquil countryside. She had landed in the beating heart of their civilization. Ziara's gaze caught on one human standing apart from the rest, his figure framed by the glow of a nearby street lamp. Young, lean, and dressed in ill-fitting clothes, he held a device in his hand, its glowing interface casting shadows across his face. His expression was unreadable, a mixture of fascination and unease. For a fleeting moment, their eyes, or what would have been eye contact if Ziara were visible, seemed to meet. She froze, her breath caught in her throat, as an unspoken connection passed between them. Then the shimmer of her cloaking device wavered. A flicker, barely perceptible, but enough to make the young man tilt his head in confusion. He took a step forward, the device in his hand rising slightly, its lens pointed directly at her. Ziara's mind raced. Should she flee? Engage? Could this one human be trusted, or was trust a luxury she could no longer afford? In the cold stillness of the moment, she chose neither. Instead, She retreated deeper into the pod, vanishing into its shadows as the world outside grew louder, closer, and infinitely more dangerous. For the first time in her long, calculated career, Ziara felt something she had always dismissed as beneath her species: fear. The city stretched like a living maze, a cacophony of sound, movement, and light. From the shadows of her crashed pod, Ziara watched as the humans outside circled the crater like wary predators, their voices raised in speculation. Each moment carried a new threat. Someone could breach her pod's weakened hull, or the authorities of this primitive species might arrive with weapons, eager to assert dominance over the unknown. But they didn't. Not yet. Ziara activated the last reserves of her pod's defensive systems, a faint, localized distortion field designed to repel curious interlopers. The humans closest to the wreckage recoiled slightly, their movements hesitant, as if sensing a force beyond their understanding. Satisfied with the brief reprieve, Ziara turned her attention inward. The pod's interior was a ruined sanctuary. Monitors flickered weakly, their readouts warning of critical failures across every system. Her survey equipment, once pristine, now lay in disarray, their delicate mechanisms shattered by the impact. She retrieved her portable analyzer, the one piece of technology still intact, and slipped it into the folds of her suit. Then came the harder choice. The pod could no longer serve as a viable shelter. Its systems were failing, and it had become a beacon for the humans' curiosity. If she stayed, she would eventually be discovered. Her cloaking device was already strained, the faint shimmer that obscured her form growing increasingly unreliable. She needed to leave, to vanish into the labyrinth of this human city and await rescue in anonymity. Taking a steadying breath, Ziara adjusted her suit's camouflage matrix. The shimmering effect spread across her body like liquid silver, rendering her nearly invisible save for the faintest distortion in the air around her. It was enough to pass unnoticed, provided she avoided direct scrutiny. She stepped out into the night. The air was dense with unfamiliar scents: petroleum, damp concrete, and the faint trace of something floral carried by a breeze. The humans who had gathered around her pod were engrossed in their observations, their words a jumble of excitement and confusion. Ziara slipped past them, her movements calculated and deliberate, her heightened senses attuned to every sound and shadow. The city enveloped her. Massive structures loomed overhead, their glass and steel exteriors reflecting the pale glow of artificial lights. Streams of vehicles roared along the streets, their headlights slicing through the darkness in a rhythmic cadence. Crowds of humans moved with purpose, their faces illuminated by handheld devices that emitted a steady glow. Ziara's first impression of humanity, as chaotic and undisciplined, deepened, but now it carried a curious edge. There was a rhythm here, a strange order hidden within the apparent randomness. She observed the way they navigated crosswalks, the silent agreements made with glances and gestures. She saw their fleeting interactions, laughter, frustration, quiet moments of tenderness, and felt a pang of something she couldn't yet name. Her wandering brought her to an alleyway, its narrow confines offering a reprieve from the overwhelming sensory input of the main streets. The shadows here were thicker, the air cooler, carrying a faint metallic tang. Ziara paused to recalibrate her surroundings, her analyzer silently mapping the area for potential threats or resources. That was when she heard the sound. A low rhythmic hum, faint but persistent. It emanated from a series of small metallic containers lined against the alley wall, each one emitting a faint glow. Curious, Ziara approached, her analyzer sweeping the objects with precision. Recyclers, it translated. The term was rudimentary, lacking the complexity of her own language, but it sufficed. These machines appeared to process waste material, converting it into usable forms. It was primitive compared to Zyrian technology, yet surprisingly efficient. As she studied the machines, a voice broke through the stillness, startling her. "Hey, what are you doing back here?" Ziara froze, her camouflage flickering momentarily. She turned to see a human male, older than the ones she had observed earlier. his frame heavy-set and his posture weary. He carried a bag slung over one shoulder, its contents clinking softly with every step. His eyes scanned the alley with suspicion, passing over Ziara without noticing her. She remained silent, motionless as he approached the recyclers. He began unloading items from his bag, bottles, scraps of metal, fragments of plastic, all of which he fed into the machines. His movements were methodical, almost reverent, as if this task carried an unspoken significance. Ziara watched with fascination. This man, like the others she had observed, defied the simplistic categorization her people had assigned to humanity. His actions hinted at an understanding of sustainability, of maintaining balance within their environment. Was this an anomaly, or did it reflect a deeper aspect of their culture? The man muttered to himself as he worked, his words soft and fragmented. Ziara strained to listen, her translator parsing the sounds into phrases. Damn machine. Always breaking down. Wish they'd fix the streetlights. Can't believe the rent's going up again. The phrases were mundane, yet they painted a vivid picture of a life filled with frustrations and obligations. This was a being who lived within the constraints of a system, yet found ways to persist. Ziara's contemplation was interrupted by a sharp noise, a sudden crash from the far end of the alley. The man turned, his body tensing as he peered into the shadows. Ziara's own senses sharpened, her analyzer sweeping the area for potential threats. A figure emerged from the darkness, smaller and leaner than the man. This one was younger, his movements jittery and erratic. He carried an object in his hand, its shape crude and menacing, a weapon by the look of it. Wallet, now, the younger human demanded, his voice edged with desperation. The older man hesitated, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the situation. Ziara felt a surge of tension, her instincts urging her to intervene, though she knew doing so would risk exposing herself. Instead, she watched. The interaction unfolded in moments, brief, charged, and ultimately diffused. The younger human, sensing hesitation, fled into the night, leaving the older man unharmed, but shaken. Ziara observed as the man gathered his belongings, muttering curses under his breath before retreating the way he had come. As the alley fell silent once more, Ziara emerged from her hiding place, her mind racing with questions. The interaction she had just witnessed was raw and unfiltered, a glimpse into the complexities of human behavior. This species was far more than the simplistic caricature she had studied from orbit. They were unpredictable, resourceful, and deeply interconnected. For the first time, Ziara began to wonder if her civilization's assumptions about humanity were not just flawed, but fundamentally wrong. She stepped back into the city, the hum of its life enveloping her once more. Each step carried her further from her old beliefs and closer to a truth she could not yet define. The city did not sleep, but it shifted. The frantic rhythm of daytime softened into a different melody under the cover of night, one no less vibrant, but tinged with an undercurrent of secrecy. Streets that had pulsed with countless footsteps now echoed with sporadic whispers of movement, the hum of distant engines filling the spaces between. For Ziara, this nocturnal world presented an opportunity and a threat. She moved cautiously, her cloaking field flickering intermittently, its failing state an ever-present reminder of her precarious situation. Every step carried her deeper into the city, the towering structures and web of illuminated signs forming an urban jungle that seemed to expand endlessly. Yet, despite its vastness, she felt the invisible pressure of its walls closing in. Her analyzer beeped faintly in warning, a soft, rhythmic tone that pulsed like an alarm buried deep within her thoughts. Resources were dwindling. The suit's camouflage matrix would fail completely within hours without recharging. Even her own body, finely attuned to Zirian biology, was beginning to falter under the planet's gravity and the unfiltered air. She needed a solution, and soon. The analyzer chimed again, but this time it was not a warning. A faint signal appeared on its display, emanating from several streets away. It was artificial, distinct from the noise of human technology. Ziara's pulse quickened as she studied the readings. The signal was faintly Zyrian, unmistakable in its harmonic pattern. She moved with purpose, weaving through alleys and narrow passages, her senses tuned to every sound and shift around her. The city's underbelly came alive as she ventured further, a stark contrast to the bustling surface. Graffiti marked the walls with symbols she couldn't yet decipher, while the scent of decay mixed with the occasional burst of tantalizing, unfamiliar aromas. Her path led her to an unassuming building, its exterior worn and unremarkable save for the faint flicker of light seeping through the cracks in a boarded-up window. The signal was stronger here, emanating from within. Ziara approached cautiously, her analyzer scanning for any signs of danger. The door creaked open with a soft push, revealing a dimly lit interior cluttered with objects that defied immediate understanding. Shelves lined the walls, laden with devices, scraps of metal and objects that glinted with faint energy signatures. It was a workshop, or something akin to it. A figure emerged from the shadows. "Who's there?" The voice was sharp, tinged with suspicion. Ziara instinctively froze, her cloaking field shimmering as she drew back into the darkness. The figure moved closer, a human male, his frame wiry and his hands calloused. He carried a small device that buzzed faintly, its blue light casting eerie shadows across his face. Ziara realized too late that the device was a scanner, its range primitive but effective. The man's gaze locked onto the distortion caused by her failing camouflage. "What the?" he murmured, his eyes widening. "What is that?" The decision came swiftly. Ziara deactivated the cloaking field entirely, stepping forward with deliberate slowness. Her form, tall and alien, shimmered into full visibility under the dim light. The man stumbled back, his device clattering to the floor. "Wait," Ziara said, her voice modulated through her translator. The sound emerged soft, almost musical, designed to disarm. "I mean no harm." The man's reaction was a volatile mixture of fear and fascination. He scrambled to his feet, his hands raised defensively. What are you? How did you—" "I need your help," Ziara interrupted, her tone firm but not unkind. "You are in possession of technology that does not belong to your species." The man blinked, his confusion deepening. "What are you talking about? I don't—" Ziara raised her analyzer, its display projecting a faint beam of light that illuminated a small object on one of the shelves. It was crude by her standards, little more than a fragment of a Zyrian energy core, but its presence on Earth was alarming. The man followed her gaze, his expression shifting. "Oh, that thing? Found it in some junk a while back. No idea what it is." "It is dangerous," Ziara said. "Its energy could destabilize under the wrong conditions. I must contain it." The man hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, take it. Just, what are you?" Ziara considered her response carefully. "I am a traveler, stranded." She gestured toward the core. "This technology must not remain here. There are others who might seek it, others who could harm you." The man's eyes narrowed. "You mean someone's looking for that thing? Or for you?" As if on cue, a sound echoed from outside, a sharp, metallic clang followed by muffled voices. Ziara's body tensed, her senses flaring. Through the workshop's small window, she glimpsed figures moving in the shadows, their shapes silhouetted by faint streetlights. "They're here," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The man turned toward the window, his face pale. "Who's they?" "Not human," Ziara replied. "We must leave." The words barely left her mouth before the door exploded inward, a blast of force that sent debris flying. 3 figures entered, their forms obscured by dark, flowing garments that shimmered unnaturally under the light. Their movements were deliberate, their focus unerring as they advanced. Ziara's mind raced. These were not humans, nor were they Zyrian. Their technology bore the telltale signs of scavenger factions, opportunistic predators who scoured unprotected worlds for salvageable remnants of advanced civilizations. "Stay behind me," Ziara commanded, stepping forward. The scavengers hesitated for only a moment, before one of them raised a device, a crude weapon that emitted a high-pitched whine as it charged. Ziara reacted instinctively, activating the remains of her suit's shielding. A translucent barrier flared to life just as the weapon discharged, absorbing the blast in a cascade of violet sparks. The man behind her gasped, his fear palpable. "What the hell is happening?" he shouted. "Later," Ziara snapped, her focus unyielding. She raised her analyzer, its interface reconfigured into a makeshift weapon. With a flick of her wrist, a beam of energy erupted from the device, striking one of the scavengers and sending them crashing into the shelves. The room descended into chaos, the confined space amplifying every sound and movement. Ziara fought with precision, her actions swift and calculated, but the scavengers were relentless. When the dust finally settled, the room was silent once more, the scavengers incapacitated. Ziara turned to the man, who stared at her with a mixture of awe and terror. "We need to move," she said. "Now." Without waiting for a response, she grabbed the energy core and led the way out into the night, the city's labyrinth swallowing them whole once again. The city swallowed them like a vast, indifferent predator. Shadows clung to every corner as Ziara and the man, who finally introduced himself as Callan, wove through the labyrinth of alleys and streets. The scavenger attack had left her shaken, her mind racing with calculations and probabilities that refused to settle. Every sound, every flicker of light became a potential threat. Ziara clutched the energy core tightly, its faint glow seeping through the material of her suit. Callan, meanwhile, was struggling to keep pace, his breaths heavy and uneven. The disjointed rhythm of his footsteps grated on her finely tuned senses, but she said nothing. His survival, like hers, hinged on escape. "Who were those people?" Callan asked, his voice breaking the tense silence. Ziara glanced back at him, her translator rendering her reply in a clipped, precise tone. "They were scavengers, opportunists who prey on stranded vessels and vulnerable species. Their presence here means one thing: Earth is under scrutiny." Callan swore under his breath. "And they were after... what? That thing you're holding?" "Yes." She paused, her gaze scanning the darkened street ahead. "And possibly me." His eyes widened. "Great. Just great." The pair pressed on, their path winding toward a quieter district of the city. The buildings here were older, their facades worn by time, with ivy creeping along their edges. It was quieter, almost serene, but Ziara remained on edge. The scavengers had found her pod, which meant they likely had access to her initial landing coordinates. They wouldn't give up easily. When they finally stopped to catch their breath, Callan slumped against a weathered brick wall, his hands on his knees. "Okay," he panted, "this is insane. You show up looking like some kind of..." He gestured vaguely at her tall, angular form. "Alien goddess or something, then my shop gets trashed, and now I'm running for my life? I didn't sign up for this." Ziara tilted her head, her silver eyes narrowing. "Your involvement is unfortunate but necessary. If you wish to survive, you will need to adapt quickly." "Adapt?" Callan barked out a laugh, his voice tinged with hysteria. "Lady, I'm just a guy who tinkers with junk. I'm not cut out for whatever this is." Before she could respond, a faint hum began to rise, barely perceptible but growing steadily louder. Ziara stiffened, her attention snapping to the sky. Callan followed her gaze. "What is it?" Ziara's voice dropped to a near whisper. "A patrol drone. Not human." Callan paled. "You mean more of those scavenger things?" "No." She activated her analyzer, its display casting a faint light across her face. The readings confirmed her suspicion. The drone belonged to her people. Ziara's mind reeled. The signal was unmistakable, a Zirian reconnaissance unit designed for stealth and efficiency. Its presence here could mean one of two things: her people had come for her, or they had come for something far more concerning. The drone's light swept across the rooftops, its beam carving through the night. Ziara grabbed Callan's arm and pulled him into the shadow of a nearby alcove. "Stay silent," she commanded. The drone hovered closer, its soft hum resonating like a heartbeat. Ziara's gaze fixed on it, her mind racing through possibilities. If her people were tracking her, why send a drone instead of a direct rescue? The thought left a bitter taste in her mouth. The light passed over their hiding spot but didn't linger. The drone shifted direction and continued down the street, its hum fading into the distance. Callan let out a shaky breath. What the hell was that? My people, Ziara replied. Her voice carried a weight that silenced him. The admission lingered in the air, heavy with implications. Wait, Callan said, his brow furrowing. You're telling me your own people are after you? Why? I thought they were here to rescue you. They should be, Ziara said, her voice tight. But something is wrong. That drone wasn't looking to rescue, it was searching. For what? Ziara hesitated. The question gnawed at her. Her people's behavior was out of alignment with their protocols, and it unsettled her deeply. Had her crash initiated a greater threat than she realized, or had her presence triggered an unspoken contingency? The silence between them stretched, broken only by the distant murmur of the city. I need answers, Ziara finally said, her gaze fixed on the glowing core in her hand. This energy fragment may hold some. Great, Callan said dryly, because running for my life wasn't complicated enough. Ziara ignored him. Her fingers danced across the core's surface, activating its latent interface. A holographic display materialized, shimmering faintly in the air. Lines of Zirian script scrolled across it, their meaning clear only to her. Her blood ran cold. The fragment contained a subroutine, an encoded message designed to self-activate upon contact with Zirian technology. The message was brief, but damning. Directive: contain or neutralize human anomaly. Preserve galactic order. Non-compliance unacceptable. Her hands trembled as she deactivated the interface. Bad news, isn't it? Callan asked, his voice uneasy. Ziara didn't answer immediately. She stared at the core, her mind spinning with the implications. Humanity wasn't just under observation. They were deemed a threat, and the directive was clear. Her people would not hesitate to eliminate that threat if necessary. Finally, she looked at Callan, her expression unreadable. It's worse than I feared, she said softly. Your people. They're in danger. From mine. Callan's face drained of color. What does that mean? It means, Ziara said, her voice firm, that I cannot wait for rescue. If I don't act, Earth will face extinction. The gravity of her words hung between them. Callan looked at her, his eyes searching hers for any hint of reassurance. But Ziara offered none. In that moment, she understood the depth of her predicament. The scavengers, the drone, the directive. They were all threads of a larger web, one that threatened to ensnare not only her, but the entirety of humanity. And she was the only one who could unravel it. The city sprawled beneath the velvet canopy of night, its hum a faint whisper against the cool air. Yet within that quietude, a storm brewed in Ziara's mind, one that refused to settle. The holographic message replayed in her thoughts, its stark command echoing with cold finality. Neutralize human anomaly. Callan trudged behind her as they navigated yet another series of narrow streets, his unease palpable. He was trying to keep pace, but his every step betrayed exhaustion. The tension between them had grown taut, a silent thread that neither seemed willing to address yet. So, he finally muttered, breaking the fragile quiet. This plan of yours, what does it even look like? Running's not going to cut it forever, right? Ziara didn't immediately reply. Her silver eyes scanned their surroundings, analyzing every shadow and flicker of movement. It was a question she had been avoiding, but Callan's persistence demanded an answer. No, she said at last. Running will not suffice. We need to act. Callan snorted. Yeah, but how? You're talking about facing down your own people, who, by the way, seem like they're a lot better equipped than us. Better equipped, yes, she admitted, But they are not invincible. The scavengers confirmed that much. Their presence here is opportunistic. They wouldn't risk it otherwise. If my people feared retaliation, they would never send a single drone. They would send a fleet. Callan frowned, his steps faltering. That's supposed to be comforting? It means, Ziara said, her tone sharpening, that they're unsure of their position. They're probing, testing. It gives us an advantage. Callan shook his head, muttering something under his breath. Ziara didn't press him. The weight of their situation was pressing enough without further argument. They turned a corner and came upon a dilapidated building that loomed against the skyline. Its windows were shattered, and its walls bore the scars of age and neglect. But to Ziara, it was perfect. The structure offered concealment and, more importantly, elevation. A vantage point from which to observe the surrounding area. Inside, the air was thick with dust, the faint scent of mildew clinging to the crumbling interior. Ziara's boots crunched softly against the debris-strewn floor as she led the way to an upper level. Callan followed reluctantly, his flashlight casting erratic beams across the walls. "What's so special about this place?" he asked. Ziara glanced back at him. "Perspective. We need to understand our enemy's movements before we act. From here we can observe without being observed." Callan muttered something that sounded like a curse, but said nothing further. He slumped against a wall, his flashlight extinguished, and crossed his arms. Ziara knelt by the window, her analyzer extending into a slim telescopic lens. The device hummed softly as it scanned the city below, its display overlaying patterns of movement and faint energy signatures. Minutes passed in tense silence, the air between them growing heavier with every second. Finally, Callan broke it. "You haven't told me the whole truth, have you?" Ziara stiffened, but her gaze didn't waver from the analyzer. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, his voice tinged with frustration, "you're holding back. All this talk about anomalies and threats, it's more than just some bureaucratic directive, isn't it? There's something you're not telling me." She hesitated. Callan's instincts were sharper than she had anticipated. "It's not a matter of withholding," she said carefully. "It's a matter of calculation. The stakes are higher than I initially understood. Humanity's fate is intertwined with something much larger." "Great," he muttered. "That's not ominous at all." Before Ziara could respond, the analyzer chimed softly. Her focus snapped to the display, where a series of red markers were converging near the city's edge. "They're regrouping," she said, her voice cold. "Scavenger units, small but organized. They've detected the energy signature of my technology." Callan leaned forward, his expression uneasy. "So they're still hunting us." "They're hunting me," she corrected. "You're incidental." "Comforting," he muttered, though his tone lacked its usual bite. Ziara's mind raced. The scavengers' persistence was both troubling and fortuitous. If she could predict their movements, she might exploit their presence to her advantage. But the risk to Callan and the collateral damage to humans gnawed at her conscience. She turned to face him fully, her expression unreadable. "I need you to stay here." His brow furrowed. "What? Why?" "I can draw them away," she said. "If I lead them into the industrial zones, their detection equipment will be overwhelmed by interference. It will buy us time to plan." "And leave me here as bait?" he snapped. "Not happening." "You're not bait," she said firmly. "You're safer here. The scavengers won't waste resources on an ordinary human." "Ordinary?" he scoffed. "Thanks for the vote of confidence." Ziara's gaze softened, an almost imperceptible shift. "You've already helped more than you realize, Callan, but this is something I must do alone." The sincerity in her voice silenced him. For a moment, the only sound was the distant hum of the city outside. "Fine," he said finally, his tone begrudging. "But if you're not back in a few hours, I'm coming after you." Ziara inclined her head, a faint smile ghosting across her lips. "Fair enough." She rose and adjusted the energy core, securing it within a compartment of her suit. Without another word, she turned and disappeared into the shadows of the building, her movements silent and purposeful. The street seemed colder, harsher as she descended. Each step carried her closer to the scavenger's projected path, her senses sharp and her mind focused. The core hummed faintly, its energy a muted pulse against her chest. As she moved, a thought surfaced unbidden. What if she failed? The question lingered, unwelcome but insistent. She pushed it aside, focusing instead on the rhythm of her steps and the steady hum of the analyzer. Failure was not an option, not when so much hung in the balance. She reached the industrial district, its vast machinery looming like silent sentinels. Here the air was heavy with the scent of oil and metal, the cacophony of automated systems masking her presence. The scavengers were close now. She could feel it. Ziara paused, her gaze sweeping the shadows. Her hand tightened around the hilt of the makeshift weapon she had fashioned from the analyzer. This was where she would make her stand. The industrial zone was a labyrinth of decay and functionality, its rusting machinery groaning softly as if lamenting the years of neglect. The air tasted of iron and smoke, mingling with the faint electric hum of scavenger tech that resonated just beyond Ziara's immediate perception. She moved like a shadow, her cloaking field flickering intermittently as her energy reserves drained further. The scavengers' pursuit had been relentless. Their adaptive technology kept pace with her ingenuity at an unsettling rate, but now they were within range, their signals converging steadily toward her chosen battleground. In the pit of her chest, the energy core pulsed with a quiet urgency, as though it too sensed the mounting tension. Ziara's fingers brushed the compartment where it rested. The core's faint luminescence felt like both a burden and a beacon, its power sought by forces she could barely comprehend. Directive: contain or neutralize human anomaly, preserve galactic order. The words reverberated in her thoughts as she crouched behind a towering assembly of defunct turbines. The scavengers were close now, close enough for her suit's sensors to detect their distorted biological signatures. They were hybrids, a grotesque amalgamation of stolen technology and organic remnants from countless worlds. Their ruthlessness was unmatched, their purpose singular: acquisition by any means. Ziara drew a steadying breath. The scavengers were not her greatest enemy, not truly. The greater threat loomed above and beyond, shrouded in the cold logic of her people's directive. Her loyalty to the Zirian collective had been unwavering once. Now it felt fragile, a thread unraveling with every passing moment on this strange, resilient world. They fear what they cannot control, she thought. But do I? The first scavenger emerged from the shadows, a hulking figure clad in mismatched armor, its movements unnervingly smooth. Its head swiveled, scanning the area with precision. Ziara tensed, her hand gripping the modified energy blade she had crafted from scavenged parts. When it turned away, she struck. The blade sang softly as it sliced through the air, embedding itself in the scavenger's core. Sparks erupted as its systems failed, and it collapsed with a guttural, mechanical groan. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant hiss of steam escaping the machinery. But it didn't last. A chorus of shrill, metallic screeches erupted, echoing through the industrial zone as the other scavengers registered the loss of their unit. Lights flickered to life in the distance, search beams cutting through the darkness. Ziara bolted. Her cloak flickered again, but she pushed forward, her every step calculated. She had mapped this area during her initial scans. Now she moved with the precision of someone who knew the stakes. The scavengers closed in, their grotesque forms darting through the labyrinth with inhuman speed. She led them toward the trap she had painstakingly prepared. Beneath the ground lay a network of conduits and pressurized steam pipes, old, brittle, and volatile. It had taken hours to rig the failsafes, but if her timing held, the scavengers would have no time to react. As she reached the designated point, Ziara stopped and turned. The scavengers were upon her, their glowing eyes reflecting hunger and malice. She activated the detonator. The world erupted. Steam burst from the ground with a deafening roar, shrouding the area in scalding white mist. The force knocked Ziara off her feet, and she scrambled to regain her balance as the scavengers faltered, their forms disoriented in the chaos. He shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. Perfect. So we're on some intergalactic hit list because your people are scared of what we might become? Ziara hesitated, her voice softening. It's more complex than that. Humanity represents uncertainty, a potential my people cannot quantify and therefore cannot control. For centuries, the collective has prided itself on order and predictability. Your kind threatens that balance simply by existing. Callan's expression hardened. Sounds like their problem, not ours. Perhaps, Ziara said, but their fear makes it your problem too. The silence that followed was heavy, stretching between them like a chasm. Callan was the first to break it. So, he said, his voice steadier now, what's the plan? You've got this fancy core thing, and I've got, well, sarcasm and bad ideas. What's the next move? Ziara allowed herself a faint smile. The core contains more than just power. It holds data, a record of everything I've observed since arriving on Earth, as well as evidence of the collective's intentions. If I can amplify its signal, I can broadcast that information across the galactic network. And that'll, what? Shame them into leaving us alone? Not shame, Ziara said, her tone firm. Accountability. The collective thrives on secrecy and compliance. Exposing their actions would force them to reconsider their approach. They may be powerful, but they are not impervious to scrutiny. Callan considered this for a moment, then nodded. All right, so where do we do this? Your ship's toast, and I don't exactly have a satellite uplink handy. Ziara's expression grew distant. There is one place, a facility hidden deep beneath the city, built long before my arrival. It was a contingency, a means of escape should my mission fail. The technology there is advanced enough to amplify the core's signal. Great, Callan said, hoisting the scavenger blade. Let's go blow some minds. The descent into the facility was treacherous, the tunnels winding and labyrinthine. Callan's flashlight cast long dancing shadows on the walls, while Ziara's suit illuminated their path with a soft silver glow. The air grew colder as they moved deeper, and the weight of the earth above pressed down on them like a silent, omnipresent observer. When they finally reached the core chamber, Callan let out a low whistle. The room was vast, its walls lined with crystalline panels that pulsed faintly with residual energy. At its center stood a towering device, an amplifier, its spire reaching toward the ceiling like a spear poised to pierce the heavens. This is it? Callan asked, his voice echoing slightly. Ziara nodded, already moving toward the console. Once the core is integrated, the signal will propagate across the galactic network. It will take time, but the data cannot be erased once it is transmitted. As she worked, Callan lingered near the edge of the chamber, his gaze scanning the shadows. You sure they won't trace this back here? They will, Ziara said without looking up. But by then, it will be too late. Her hands moved deftly across the console, each motion precise and deliberate. The core clicked into place, its glow intensifying as the amplifier roared to life. The air hummed with energy, and the chamber seemed to vibrate with the weight of what was to come. Here we go, Callan muttered, gripping his blade tighter. Ziara stepped back, her silver eyes fixed on the core as it began to emit a series of pulses, waves of light and sound that reverberated through the chamber. The first response came almost immediately. A distant tremor shook the ground, followed by the faint sound of approaching footsteps. They're here, Ziara said, her voice calm. Callan grinned despite himself. Let them come. The battle that followed was fierce and unrelenting. Scavenger units poured into the chamber, their grotesque forms a relentless tide. Ziara and Callan fought side by side, their movements synchronized in a way that spoke of trust, forged in fire. The amplifier continued its work, the core's light growing brighter with every pulse. When the last scavenger fell, the chamber was silent once more, save for the hum of the amplifier. Ziara turned to Callan, her expression weary but resolute. "It's done," she said. He nodded, his exhaustion evident. "So, what now?" Ziara looked at the core, its light steady and unyielding. "Now we wait, and we prepare. The message is out there. The galaxy will know the truth. But the collective will not forget. They will come, and we must be ready." Callan smirked, leaning against the wall. "You're sticking around, then?" "For now," Ziara said, her voice soft. "Humanity is not a problem to be solved. It is a promise to be fulfilled. I intend to see it through." The two of them stood in the chamber as the light of the core filled the room, a beacon of defiance and hope that would ripple across the stars.